is not worth living. And sometimes it goes on and, it's coming a bit too late for the examination. I will tell you a story of a preacher. A preacher was told by his doctor that he had only a few weeks left to live. He went home feeling very sad. And when his wife heard the sad news, she said to him, "Honey, if there is anything I can do to make you happy, tell me." The preacher answered, "You know, dear, there is that box in the kitchen cabinet with what you always called your little secret in it. And you said you never would want me to open it as long as you lived. Now that I'm about to go home to be with the Lord, why don't you show me what is in that secret box of yours?" The preacher's wife got out the box and opened the lid. It contained $100,000 and 3 eggs. "What are those eggs doing in the box?" the preacher asked. "Well, honey," she replied, "every time your sermon was really bad, I put an egg in the box." Now the preacher had been preaching for over 40 years and seeing only 3 eggs in that old shoebox. He started to feel very proud about himself, and it warmed his soul. "And what about that $100,000? he asked. "Oh, you see," she whispered softly, "every time there were a dozen eggs in the box, I sold them." So, brothers and sisters, sometimes in our daily life we need jokes to help relieve us of the unnecessary stress. With New Year fireworks, brothers and sisters, still vivid in our minds, perhaps some of you went to Marina Bay Sands, is it? Around that area. I didn't go myself. And the Chinese New Year firecrackers being prepared for the coming festivity in about 2 weeks' time. A good question to ponder is, how was the past year to us? How did it unfold to you personally about life? The Straits Times called 2010 as a year to forget, because it marked huge losses in the insurance industry, one of the severest hurricane seasons of the past 100 years, catastrophic quakes, and a volcanic eruption towards the closing of the year. The disasters affected all the 5 continents, with the Americas as the highest hit and Asia as a close second. But Europe, Africa, and Australia were not spared from the disasters. Disaster-full year. But for most of us here, these are all pictures on the lucid plasma screens or newsprint. We don't really experience any major natural disaster here in Singapore, except for a freak flooding in Orchard Road in June. But I missed that one, even that one I missed, because I was in Indonesia for a meeting, so I didn't even see that, freak flood. The world economic slowdowns that started in 2007 seem to have dissipated much faster here in Singapore than in any other places either. Housing prices are back to normal, if not on the up and up. We have even watched the opening of 2 new casinos on the islands. What more can we ask? We are really blessed. But right before New Year came an omen-like shock as the news reported how about 5,000 blackbirds fell from the sky in the town of Beebe in Arkansas Did you hear about that? Did you read? Yes. A few days later, 100,000 fish were found dead and floating in the water and lined the banks of a 20-mile stretch of the Arkansas River, about 125 miles northwest of Little Rock. Now, most of us perhaps have heard of Little Rock as the city where the US President Bill Clinton spent his childhood and where his daughter Chelsea was born. As if these were not enough, more reports of dead birds dropping from the sky and dead fish floating on the water were reported happening in different places in the world. What is happening to us? Frankly, this caused me to wonder, especially as no plausible explanation had been forthcoming from any qualified sources. Many people, brothers and sisters, speculate around these happenings, including some apocalyptic warnings and predictions. Could this be true? I dropped by in one of a major church information center in downtown last Wednesday. It was my day off and it was raining heavily, so I have always wanted to come in and see what they're offering there. So I went in and I took a few free leaflets from the display racks and started reading them. All of them were about or related to the apocalypse. Could all this be true? I was wondering. Are we heading into a catastrophic ending known as the end of the world? Very simple, and yet it is extremely profound. What is the message? The message is choose life. Yes, choose life. At the final days of Advent, Pope Benedict XVI gave a very important remarks, and that can be seen as a strong reminder, if not a warning, to the world from our Pope. In front of cardinals, bishops, priests, and religious, on the occasion of Christmas greetings to the Roman Curia, the Pope revealed a deep insight into the state of our world and in which direction it is going. Here is what the Pope says. It is good to listen to this prophetic appeal, and here are the excerpts. The Pope said, "The very future of the world is at stake. An eclipse of reason has taken place, that man no longer uses his intellect in search of God, but is driven by his passion and desire for self-gratification." Now, does that sound right? Does that ring any bell? Driven by his passion and desire for self-gratification. I can give you one very good example. Okay, when I came here, all Catholics in Singapore were observing no meat on Fridays. And then, I think, after 2 years after that, a news came that now the Archdiocese is allowing people not to observe that. Now I'm asking you, have you taken that announcement and be glad that now I'm free? Are you happy about it? Or are you still observing it? You know, in this time when people are so self-concerned and for self-gratification, there is no place for self-mortification. This is another thing the Pope said. The disintegration of the key principles of law and of the fundamental moral attitudes underpinning them burst open the dams which until that time had protected peaceful coexistence among peoples. The sun was setting over an entire world. This is very important now. The Pope said, "No pleasure is ever enough. And all of this is in the name of the fatal misunderstanding of freedom, which actually undermines man's freedom and ultimately destroys it." No pleasure is ever enough. I would like to close this heavy topic with a hopeful note from the Psalm of the day, Psalm 40. "I waited patiently for the Lord's help. Then he listened to me, and I heard my cry. He pulled me out of a dangerous pit, out of the deadly quicksand. He set me safely on a rock and made me secure. He taught me to sing a new song, a song of praise to our God." Brothers and sisters, but in order for God to save us, we must give out our hands to Him so He can pull us out. We have the freedom to ask for His help. From the book of Sirach, "When God in the beginning created man, He made him subject to his own free choice. If you choose, you can keep the commandments. It is loyalty to do His will. There are set before you fire and water. To whichever you choose, stretch forth your hand. Before man are life and death. Whichever he chooses shall be given him." Let us remember the Pope's words. No pleasure is ever enough, and all of this in the name of fatal misunderstanding of freedom, which actually undermines man's freedom and ultimately destroys it. The Lord said, "I have set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse. Choose life then." Amen.